think.
27.
All right.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, and there we go, live on both platforms.
Hello, welcome to the 27th episode of Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing well.
Yeah.
Gio is a little bit under the weather this week, so he's taking a little bit of time off, but we are coming to you live and in person.
Yes, and him's your well wishes. So today we are going to discuss, in light of the recent TV series and the entire Skywalker saga as a whole, is Anakin Skywalker still the chosen one? Dave, what are your thoughts?
So that's a can of worms to open right there, because you got to first argue, was Anakin ever the chosen one? And being an OT person, I'm starting with, did George have this whole chosen one prophecy sort of thing in the back of his mind when he created the OT? Is because if you want to say, is Anakin still the chosen one, you got to say, was the prophecy fulfilled when he killed Palpatine in Return of the Jedi? It happens in the OT, right? Did he have that whole thing in mind when that was done? Or because I'm not going to accept that he's the chosen one and he redeems himself and he brings balance to the Force in a retcon. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that I'm going to say it's complicated, because there's just so many things that you've got to discuss and you've got to think about. So get your initial thoughts, and then I've got tons of them.
Regarding your first point, that was he ever meant to be a chosen one to begin with, I think that, figuratively speaking, since the way these Joseph Campbell type stories go, Luke Skywalker would arguably have been the chosen one for the original trilogy. And because George still wanted to obey that motif for the prequels, but couldn't have Anakin be the chosen one in that regard because of what his character journey is, decided, well, I still want that motif in here, so I'm going to come up with this chosen one prophecy to validate Anakin as that character, to give him some other type of kinship with Luke in a way. Taking the 6 movies, excluding the sequel trilogy for a moment, then yes, Anakin is absolutely the chosen one, because he does what they need him to do. He shows up. It's the Jedi's belief in him as the chosen one which prompts him to take the wait-and-see approach with the Sith Lord. He ends up, yes, he turns to the dark side, destroys the broken Jedi Order which needed to fall, and his children come and help him redeem, and he makes the right call and finally gets rid of the one evil true Sith and brings balance to the Force. Even though I never really buy the notion that he's redeemed. I mean, that's a word that everybody likes to use, but it's like, okay, you made the right call at the end. That doesn't, what was it that Norrington said in Pirates of the Caribbean? He said, well, one good deed is not enough to, forgive a man for a lifetime of wickedness. Like, yes, that's very true. So, yes, Vader made the right call. I wouldn't say he's redeemed, but then we have the complication of the sequel trilogy, where originally there was no Palpatine, and clearly Palpatine had no involvement whatsoever in episode 7 and 8. But in episode 8, everything Luke says about the old school Jedi validates Anakin as the chosen one even more, and that these old Jedi, broken Jedi, needed to fall. The Force needed its Trojan horse or whatever to make that happen. Dark Lord of the Sith is selected as the one who's actually going to make that happen, with Anakin again being the prime agent to allow it to happen. And the consequence of that success is that you have a 23-year-long Sith empire, which is then taken down by the chosen one's kids per his own actions, because it was Vader falling into the whole, or Palpatine rather, falling into the whole self-fulfilling prophecy trap we talked about, where the very notion of telling Anakin that, or telling Vader that he had a son, is what ended up expediting his defeat. But since they brought Palpatine back in Rise of Skywalker, and Anakin is only one of the many Jedi voices who urges Rey on, then it's like you completely destroyed that whole motif in the first 6 movies, or the whole, or at least that George infused into the first 3. And so it makes you wonder, is the idea that this is a long-winded plan where he got the baton the first significant part of the way, the first 6 movies, Luke helped a little bit, and now they're getting it over the finish line? Because that seems to be what the new story has done. Because it's also worth noting, it's never been said on screen in any Star Wars adaptation where these prophecies came from or if they're even true.
That brings me to my next point.
Because as I have said, it's not so much that Anakin does anything to be the chosen one, it's that other people putting stock in that idea is what allows things in the prequels to go so wrong for the Jedi.
So if you go back and you look, and I looked a lot over the past week to find the actual prophecy, a written out somewhere that's in canon, an explanation of the actual prophecy. And it's alluded to in a lot of places. And the most one is just the Mace Windu's almost kind of throwaway one line is, are you referring to the prophecy of the one that will bring balance to the Force? That's basically it. That's what you get. Now, there's some other places that are non-corroborated sources that say, oh, it's one that will be born without a father, or, that will be born of the Force. We don't see a canon where that's written down, where that's the thing. This says that from the time of the High Republic, or even further back, if you look on Wikipedia, is that these prophecies were created by the first Jedi. They were just out there. There were a lot of prophecies, and this is just one that the Jedi happened to know. That Qui-Gon apparently subscribed to, and that's where it is. So, there's not a lot of real definition to this prophecy and explaining how this person brings balance to the Force, what balance to the Force is. We're left, I think, to our own interpretations of that. And I'll be dead level honest, I don't know if I like that or if I don't like that we get to make our own interpretation kind of in a similar way to how Qui-Gon was interpreting how the prophecy is.
Yeah, because that was something I was hoping that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were going to discuss in the Obi-Wan series. Because they alluded to it a bit in the Mortis trilogy when Obi-Wan goes into the cave on Mortis and he sees the apparition of Qui-Gon, and it's not clear, like, is this his actual Force ghost? Is this just the Mortis gods kind of messing with him and just presenting him, saying what he wants him to hear? But in that instance, Qui-Gon was telling Obi-Wan to basically have faith, trust in the process, so to speak. Whereas when Qui-Gon shows up at the end of Obi-Wan, it's just like this kind of awkward reunion, and he doesn't seem to be very concerned about it. So it's like, but then again, I don't put much stock in the writing efforts of that in terms of trying to make any grander inferences with that type of thing. So I think it's more, like I mentioned, that it's George trying to retain that whole, we need Anakin to seem like a hero, because in the first movie, I mean, yeah, you could argue but he does destroy the Trade Federation ship, but it's on accident. Whereas in the second one, he just constantly fails and is being manipulated, pushed by other people. And the third one, he fails in a different way.
Right.
He still takes charge of his own life. But I think he also wanted the audience to kind of root for Anakin, because he knew going into it that the audience knows that Anakin's going to become Darth Vader and do all these terrible things. So it's like, how do I get the audience to kind of root for him? Or in particular, younger kids going to see the prequels, say, for the first time, who've never seen Star Wars before, and this is their first introduction to it, to sort of, string them along, as it were. Because you're right. I mean, I think I saw in one expanded universe bit where the prophecy was written out, and it wasn't really, and the problem was that what was open to interpretation is, what does it mean to bring balance to the Force?
Exactly.
And because of the dogma of the Jedi, they arrogantly interpreted that to mean that, all the Sith are going to be gone. Well, not necessarily, because you don't really know what that means. And does that mean mathematical balance, like 2 Jedi and 2 Sith, like at the end of the prequel trilogy? Or given the Sith like to do unnatural things with the Force and screw everything up, maybe that means it's, by their very nature of existing, they're unbalanced. And again, this is completely excluding Episode 9, where you have Exegol and all these Sith people there, which just throws a monkey wrench into everything. So I would say that if you take the first 8 films in the Skywalker saga, yes, Anakin's still the chosen one, because in the first 2 sequel trilogy films, Palpatine was not a part of it. And per Snoke's original plan, it was very clear that his only true motive was to get rid of Luke Skywalker, because he didn't want the Jedi coming back and starting this whole mess up again. So I would say Anakin, yes, he was the chosen one in that respect, but it's like once you start throwing in these new elements of canon, like with Episode 9, and the fact that with each of these TV series, they've been kind of planting the building blocks for Palpatine's return because they're having to do damage control, then it does become harder to push for Anakin in that way. But given we know a lot of the behind the scenes drama that's been going into making these shows, I have a hard time trying to defend their current version of canon when I know they're not putting as much effort into the research and adhering to things as they should.
Well, see, that's the kind of thing that the retcons and the things in this story is messing with you some more. Is you bring the mathematical notion of balance is at the end of Sith. It's not a mathematical balance because you've got all of these characters that are still alive that you don't necessarily know are still alive at that point. You've got Ahsoka. She takes the balance out. At that point, you have the birth of Luke and Leia. Okay, that
well, they're not. Well, the kids aren't Jedi or Sith when they're born,
but they're.
And Ahsoka did not exist in any way, shape, or form when the prequel trilogy was first completed.
Yeah, because Clones is after that. It was created after that. It just takes place during that, so she would still be there. But it is the.
As she says, "I am no Jedi," which I saw a sticker on somebody's car, which had the Ahsoka character on it, and it said that "I am no Jedi." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of neat.
But see, here's the thing: is that's bringing us to the interpretation of balance in the Force. While she is no Jedi, and while Luke and Leia are no Jedi, they are Force users. And Ahsoka is pretty decidedly a light side Force user. So that's kind of the thing. Now, in my research and in my looking, the prophecy of one who brings balance or the prophecy of the chosen one does not only exist in Jedi legends. There is a Sith prophecy of one, a chosen one, who would bring the Sith into power to get the Sith in there. There's also a prophecy of a chosen one by the Dathomir witches. Now, here's the monkey wrench that throws you in there. Anakin / Darth Vader kind of fits the definition of the Jedi chosen one and the Sith chosen one.
Well, yes, because in the novelization of Phantom Menace, it's mentioned that Darth Maul, the reason he didn't kill Anakin when he went to fight Qui-Gon on Tatooine is because he had sensed it too. Says there's something special about this kid. He goes back and tells Palpatine about it, and he references that prophecy. He's aware of it, and it's like you said, it's another Sith prophecy or something that's coming from there. But regarding the other Force users, of which there are thousands of dark side and light side users throughout the galaxy who don't subscribe to those 2 religions, which we'll probably see more of sometime later, like the Dathomir witches being, some of
which we almost saw, something that was cool. That's a sequel trilogy that was like, wait, maybe cool, the Broom Boy. It's like, wait, there's all these other people that aren't over here or over here, and then nothing. So
yeah, I think they could have tidied things up with this a lot in Episode 9 had they adhered to canon and tried to not fired Colin Trevorrow. Because I understand that he was going to bring Mortis back into it, which would have been great because George, that was all his idea, and he said it did tie a lot into the type of prophecy, the type of because even the father of Mortis is adhering to the prophecy and talking about it. Does it, you have to tame my children and look after them. And Anakin's like, well, I can't. I need to go. And once the father figures out that he is the chosen one, he's like, oh, I can't. I have to purge your memories, and you have to go. And and according to Dave Filoni, George has very specific answers for every question you could possibly have about Mortis. That it would defeat the purpose of that trilogy of episodes to tell you what those answers are. Therefore, it said, okay, that probably would have been appropriate for episode 9 to help rein it all in, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And because you have so many fans coming into Star Wars at different points in time, it's like there were some who are from the original trilogy. They're like, nah, forget, Anakin was just redeemed, or Vader was just redeemed, or whatever. Luke's the hero, blah, blah. And then the prequel trilogy fans will say, oh, he is the chosen one. He failed, blah, blah, blah. And now we have the sequel trilogy fans. They're like, well, that doesn't really matter anymore because Palpatine came back, blah, blah, blah. So it's inconsistency is what it is.
Yeah, it's one of the weird things because there are people that manage to get to adulthood and have never seen Star Wars and know nothing. And that kind of brings you back to a real question of like watch order, which I've taken to recommending for these people just so you don't give away the big reveal is, watch, this is my order, is watch Rogue One, 4, 5, then you go watch 1, 2, 3, then you watch 6. And then if you would never get to the sequels, you're fine. But it just kind of that, in my mind, kind of watching that order that way, you get your big reveal. And you do kind of get the arc where Anakin is the chosen one and his redemption or whatever at the end brings it all back in. But is that bringing balance at that point? Because not mathematical balance, because he's returned to the light side. Luke, Leia are there on the light side, and you have no dark side. That's just a Jedi-centric, Jedi-only definition of the Force's imbalance. And I mean, how is it balanced if it is just strongly for the light? I mean, we'd like to think that that's the way things should be, but it's not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The term Great Jedi, well, in the proper term, is a truer balance being struck between light and dark. Something that Ahsoka is, basically. I mean, she's not afraid to use, violence and, fighting style if she needs to, even though she still kind of has her own moral compass that she's following. So there's that. And then we had the question recently pop up in the Book of Boba Fett where, Obi-Wan once said only a Sith deals in absolutes. And Luke is trying to force Grogu to choose between you either join me and stay or you go away and go back with him and never come back. Which is like, okay. And it's like, where will that go? And like, if Grogu become the evil Yoda? And granted, we're also dealing with a classic fairy tale conundrum in that there's no logic whatsoever to Yoda deciding that, okay, we're going to hide the twins and we're just going to lay low for 20 years and hope that they are good enough to finish this. It's like, you nearly killed Palpatine, fool. You looked up and you saw him dangling off the thing, grabbing onto it. You should have used the Force, every last energy or blood drop in your body to yank him down and slam the guy into the ground and break his neck, and you didn't do it. And you left, and you're still more than capable of fighting another day, if you will, and you just gave up.
But would it have, had he thrown him down? And spoilers here for Obi-Wan if you haven't seen Obi-Wan, and we've already done our spoiler Obi-Wan show. So, I mean, Anakin / Vader threw all of these rocks and everything.
Yeah.
The Force, you can't kill someone with like blunt force trauma in any way, shape, or form, which leads you to the potential that we will see Samuel L. Jackson again back in the world.
Yeah, the only time, well, I thought he was dead from the Force lightning before he gets thrown out the window. And I know he wants to come back. I really hope they don't bring him back, because it's like we already have the Marvel fake death universe. We have a bit of that in Star Wars. At least with Palpatine, they're trying to make it feel earned after it was totally unearned in the movie. Right. And I get Darth Maul was sort of sort of a jackrabbit type thing, because it's like, I'm certain somebody got in George's ear. I'm like, George, you really screwed this character because everybody was hyped for it. You let the marketing train go wild with this character, and you wasted him. And he probably, okay, I'll bring him back. Like, what was it, a few years ago when he's like, if I wrote the sequel trilogy, Darth Maul would have been back. It's like bullshit, It's like your episode 7 treatment, which JJ actually pilfered a lot from, did not have Darth Maul in any way, shape, or form in that story. You wouldn't have done that. You're just saying that. So I'm looking at things like like what we're talking about here, and it's like, is that really what they're trying to, what they're meeting out here? It's like, no.
So, I mean, we may see some more of the Mortis interpretations and things going on, because if people haven't figured out, or if people haven't watched, the Clone Wars episodes of Yoda going to the center of the galaxy, and the Rebels episodes, you should, because that's going to be good prep before the Ahsoka show, and I know that's a little ways out. The symbol for the Ahsoka show is the symbol for the World Between Worlds. So, that does that. We were talking pre-show about the multiverse of madness. Does that open us up for a Star Wars multiverse time travel craziness? Is that going to give us multiple interpretations of a chosen one?
Yeah, because when Ezra went to the World Between Worlds, you were seeing images of things which actually happened on the timeline rather than different versions of it. So I'm not sure if it's so much a multiverse as it is just a portal between time and space that lets you visit and potentially interfere with things which have already happened or are going to happen.
Didn't they even like throw a little bit of that in like the Lego holiday special? Wasn't that they're zipping back and forth between timelines and observing things that happen? I don't know.
But yeah, that's the Lego thing. And come to think of it, when you mentioned that nobody in Star Wars seems to have any effect of blunt force trauma, unrealistically so, I think the only time we've ever seen it have any effect is in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke's fighting Vader, and he gets pummeled by all the debris that Vader shoots at him. Because you look at in Luke, you can see it in his performance. He's just hunching along. He can barely move. He's got the big red, shiner on his forehead. It's like, okay, that's what happens when you get hit with all this type of stuff,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, it does happen in the fight between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku. Is they're throwing things and they're just kind of rolled over to the side, but nothing happens of it. I mean, they don't die or
because you look at that. I remember even kind of going, in that moment in Revenge of the Sith when Dooku brings the platform down in Obi-Wan, because I'm looking, that thing's got to weigh a ton, and it hits right on his shoulder, on the tip of his shoulder. Like, that's gonna break his arm off, and it just kind of no. But yeah, that was something.
All right, so you mentioned it. You went there. Let the record show that I didn't. What's about the potential of, is Grogu the chosen one now? That's what we're writing. I mean, he's the marketing chosen one for darn sure.
No. Well, I mean, in chosen one in regards to what? Because he's not in the Skywalker saga. It has no real relationship to that, as far as we can tell. At least as far, right? Unless they try and he could be in a negative way if they end up, if they did get any of his blood to start, bringing back Palpatine. That would be a bit much. But going back for a minute, what I mentioned about the fairy tale conundrum is that you introduce things which don't necessarily make any logical sense when you try and think it out. Again, like Yoda saying we have to lay low and do nothing for the next 20 years and hope things are good. So they could, if you apply that logic to the whole chosen one thing, the whole fairy tale, chosen one, it's like, well, I guess that kind of applies, because that's basically the logic Yoda's using for the Skywalker twins, is they're going to be the chosen ones, and they're the ones who are going to fulfill this prophecy and save us, which is another, I guess, cop-out type reason for introducing the prophecy in the first place, is that helps give Yoda justification for making the decision that he made. But it's like, if I try and apply it there, it still doesn't fit as much, because like you said, there's too many questions about where did this prophecy come from. There's one from the Sith, there's what does balance mean, and that kind of stuff. And again, with people entering Star Wars at so many different stages, they're going to interpret the stories many different ways, which is why you need consistency, which we don't have. I mean, I think they need a really clean house with the writing staff and find people who are, like, for instance, as crazy as Marvel's getting with their old multiverse type stuff, they've still managed to remain consistent with their events and not contradicting themselves and all that kind of stuff. Doing a good job so far of explaining why didn't such and such a character show up and help with bubble, and they've done a pretty good job if you actually parse through it. Star Wars doesn't have that right now. It's just all over the board. It's clear the story group has no authority over anything. That the story of Pablo Hidalgo being a consultant under Lucas and then sweet talking Kennedy into giving him a job is very accurate. He didn't do anything. He makes a lot of snide comments on Twitter, and that's about it, because clearly the story group is nowhere to be found for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. He did tell them the one point that, actually, Obi-Wan does know that Vader is Anakin, and that's about it. But it's like, I mean, Leland Chi, I'm all for Leland Chi probably having more control because he's the guru over there who knows everything, but they're not really. It's like you need to change the policy, and that no, it's not that you can go to the story group if you want. It's like, no, you write whatever Star Wars story you want, but submit it to the story group so they can give approval to make it fit. Or if you don't want the story to be impeded by canon, then do what Taika Waititi apparently is going to do. A story which has no relationship to anything we've ever seen in Star Wars, and it's going to take place so far away temporally and spatially on the timeline that it can be free to be its own thing.
It is. I agreed. I mean, they need the equivalent of we assume that Feige's doing this. Is just an overarching
the Marvel brain trust
head of this is canon, this is story, this goes, this doesn't go, you can do this, you can't do that because of all of these things that have happened before. And you would think Filoni would be doing that, but apparently not. There's too many hands and too many things. But I'm not going to let you get away with dismissing Grogu as the chosen one that easily, because your point is all of these people who come into Star Wars at all of these different points is you've got people that are coming into Star Wars because of the Baby Yoda and the cuteness and the what's going on, and we're he's being set up in a way that he could be a savior of.
That's another thing that the prophecy doesn't specify. Did it say what specific events it's referring to, or when it's supposed to be, or is it something that can keep going on? Like Grogu could go on to be a chosen one for whatever the next big post Skywalker saga storyline is, potentially.
Exactly. Is that balance, if you're interpreting balance is numerically even numbers or whatever, or a balance in it, that's going to be thrown out of balance by new Force users being born, new Jedi being trained, new Sith.
Well, it was completely thrown out of balance by the whole Sith cult on
Exactly.
For the record, I've never subscribed to the idea that balance means mathematical equivalency, because as Palpatine told Anakin once upon a time, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some would consider to be unnatural, which the Jedi don't use the Force for. But since the Sith do, I would imagine that would really throw things out of whack a lot more than, say, a bunch of Jedi would. Because yes, the Jedi throw things out of whack by becoming so dogmatic that they're unable to prevent horrible things from happening, but they don't really mess with the space-time continuum or cheat all that kind of crazy stuff. So I've always interpreted balance to mean maintaining that equilibrium between what is natural in the Force versus what isn't. And the Sith are always trying to upend that. So now that they're all gone, in a sense, there's balance. But with Episode 9, I would say, yes, Anakin is no longer the chosen one because he had nothing to do with the demise of Palpatine, unless all they had to do was a simple little fix. Have Anakin be the only one who spurs Rey on.
Yeah.
Or in some way, that could have done it. But they weren't smart enough to do that. But,
well, and that gives you the other argument for Rey as the chosen one. Is, Rey is now all the Jedi. But
she does have the Skywalker life force infused within her, thanks to Kylo sacrificing himself in that way. So as funny as it is, and we all like to joke that she's an identity thief and an imposter at the end of the movie, when she's like, "I'm Rey Skywalker." In a sense, she kind of is a Skywalker now, just not in a traditional way.
Is that the way that they've shown Force healing at that point is Kylo has sacrificed himself, has gotten his redemption arc. Everybody gets a redemption arc. It doesn't matter how many younglings you've killed. Everybody gets redemption arc. Don't get me started on Reva. Don't even get me started. But it just so now she's infused with the Skywalker life force. I think they could have explained it in a better way, other than I'm Rey Skywalker. Yeah. But yeah, she's carrying that Skywalker. I am all the Jedi. We've seen in, I think it was episode 8, her tendency to go toward the dark side without even thinking. It's just, so, I mean, she's a Palpatine, but she's a Skywalker. She is the embodiment of balance of the Force. She has all of the good. She has all of the bad.
Which is why another thing I was really disappointed with 9, because once they finally got Rey over the whole hump of her parents thing, which I didn't ever really find to be that compelling of a story, it's like, okay, what's she going to do now that Luke has inspired the whole galaxy to rise up against the First Order, which they threw away really quick. Oh, well, we're not going to see what Rey's going to do with the Force, or what this potential for that balance is going to mean for her, because look at my parents again. It's like, I can't. I just can't,
Like, again, one person, or that's a very small group of people looking down the where we're going, where we've been. This is what it needs to be. Could solve so much of that.
Yeah.
But no. But I mean, so I think, I don't know if I'm going to get to that yet. But okay, so
you'll get to it. Yet, as in this episode, you'll come back to it in a future episode.
Come back to it later in this episode. I think this is that might be a wrap up or a conclusion. So we've got Rey as the potential chosen one. I'm saying Grogu because, again, everybody's going to, this is what he's doing. Luke has already given him the this or that. So he's not a Jedi. He's kind of, it makes the prophecy a little bit broader. You don't have to be Jedi to be the chosen one. And I mean, I kind of like your point a little bit earlier is, has there been, will there be more than one chosen one?
Yeah, because I'm surprised that none of the writers in the comics or the TV series or the films have ever touched the origins of that prophecy. They've kind of left that alone, sort of like Yoda's species in his home planet. They've left that alone.
Well, that is apparently a George mandate. Yes. That is they had to go before George, or I guess maybe Kathleen at this point, because George shouldn't be, because George always said, nope, we want that to be mysterious. You can't mess with that. You can't, no more. So you had to get special dispensation to make Grogu. Is the non-specificity of the prophecy one of those mandates?
Perhaps. Yeah, it's difficult because even going back reading the J.W. Rinsler books about the making of the original trilogy, and you can see that some of these ideas are already tinkering in George's head in the 70s. Mm-hmm. That type of Joseph Campbell hero's journey, chosen one type stuff, even though it doesn't come across as blatantly as this, with the whole, Jesus motifs where he doesn't have a father, blah, blah. And then people pose the question, was Shmi telling the truth? And then the comics say, yes, she was telling the truth. There was no father. And, trying to see where that all goes. So I kind of, again, it comes down to like interpretation, like Palpatine sort of creating his own enemies and being as incompetent as he is, because what was it that Palpatine mentions in the beginning of episode 2? He's like, I will not let this republic that has stood for 1,000 years be split in two. and your Sith Empire lasted a grand total of 23 years.
Yeah.
Because you centralized your power too much.
Well, I see. I thought it made a lot more sense to you're saying Palpatine making his own enemy, and I think you're referring to him just kind of nurturing Anakin, but not like the comic books. One writer went ahead and said, no, this was Palpatine influencing the midichlorians in Shmi, physically making Bert.
Well, that's what I was referring
Anakin.
to.
Oh,
well,
okay.
that's what I was referring to that, because even when he mentions that in Revenge of the Sith, he has that fiendish look on his face. He's like, well, I get that on a surface level, he's trying to get Anakin to think about Padme. Like, oh, I can create life and make her live.
Yeah.
But literally, if you say you're creating life, that means you're creating a new life. And the way he's looking at Anakin so seductively, he's like, clearly he believes he created Anakin, even if he didn't. He's like when Anakin blows up the droid control ship, there's no real reason at that point why Palpatine should say, okay, you're the one who I'm going to use to initiate this whole grand scheme.
Yeah.
But he takes note of him anyway, because while not in the film, in the novelization, which for a while George said the novels were also canon, the novelizations anyway of the films, because they have more layered. And that he said Darth Maul told him that there's this virgin, there's something special about this kid, he's the chosen one, and that Palpatine was on board with that idea. So I did interpret it that way, and then Charles Soule kind of walked back the notion that Palpatine may have literally created Anakin by saying, oh, that's just something that Vader was thinking in his head and not really sure if it's or in a sense. But just because Vader was thinking it doesn't necessarily mean it isn't true. It's just that he's aware that that is a possibility and is thinking about it.
Right. Is that got jumped on really quick because people picked up on it. I think more people than they originally intended to pick up on it. It's like, what? This happened? That was how it is? And then, the artist and the writer is like, nope, dream sequence, not actually. Come on, now we're becoming Dallas. It's like, oh, that happened, but it was just a dream. No, we're just, yeah.
That's Dallas.
Oh, I don't know. It's a very, very touchy thing, and like I said, I don't know that I dislike the ambiguity of it. There are many things about Star Wars that I love that we all get to interpret, and we can sit here and we can have discussions like this and argue our own points and have logical, reasonable arguments. I'm sure 10 years from now, we're going to see where the entire arc with Grogu goes, and somebody who came into Star Wars being their part of their childhood, and Grogu was the greatest thing since sliced bread, is going to come up with a hopefully logical argument that no, he is the chosen one because he is not tied to the absolutes of the choice that Luke has given him. He's going to go out and he's going to go back to Mando, and he's going to still be a Force user. He's not cutting himself off from the Force. He obviously goes back and immediately uses it. He's better with it because of the brief training with Luke. He's unlocking this training that he had as a youngling, and he will be the embodiment of balance. He's going to be Mandalorian and Jedi and whatever else.
You sold the most toys, so you are the next.
Exactly. That is it. It is, you got the merchandising dollars. You are the chosen one from.
Keep your eyes peeled for a Darth Maul comic or a special saying that nope, he was the chosen one back in the prequels because he stole the most merchandise.
He was deemed worthy of bringing him back multiple times. It's like, nope, Maul is going to come back as a cyborg. Oh, nope, Maul is going to come back as this less cyborgy, spidery thing. Oh, nope, Maul is going to, I don't know if you get if he ever gets a redemption arc as all of them do, but he does get, a really amazing, if you're not a Rebels watcher, you should be again.
Yeah, because
Um,
in that even it would not be redemption because you tried to murder Obi-Wan in that moment, and he's motivated by that point more by revenge when he says he will avenge us.
yeah.
Because he's still thinking about vengeance. He's not, which is his weakness as a character, or not a weakness as a character, but his own personal weakness. He can't let go of his desire for vengeance.
Well, we won't get started on the original title of Revenge of the Jedi, but it's like, oh, maybe that's an okay. But yeah, I think I was reading an article this week sometime is could this balance and this prophecy be a balance within yourself? Is that, Jedi are not particularly balanced. The argument is even like Sith are more balanced than Jedi, because Jedi specifically, from what Palpatine is saying and from other points, is it's not a power that the Jedi, or not a story that Jedi would tell you. They cut themselves off from that. They won't acknowledge that. Jedi will not allow themselves attachment. Good attachments, bad attachments. That's not a thing that they're supposed to do. Is they won't use certain powers in the Force. Well, that's a power in the Force. That's a part of the Force. The dark side is a part of the Force, the same as the light side is. Is it an internal balance? Did Anakin create in himself an internal balance?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. But where I'm going is, if the notion of that internal balance of the Force, the good and the bad, could Ahsoka be interpreted? Will Ahsoka be interpreted more as a chosen one when we get an Ahsoka show?
I think it's more likely with Dave somewhat running things that she would be revealed as the next chosen one before Grogu.
That is, his love for his creation is the thing. Now the question is, who exactly created Grogu himself? Is Grogu another like Dave phenomenon, Dave creation? I don't know. Will he have to battle between which of his children is the chosen one? I don't know. But so I think I'll go back to what I said I was going to go to before. So we talked about Mortis, and we talked about the prophecy and the father and the son and the daughter. Okay, the symbols of that. Can it be that the chosen one is whoever is acting as the father, and the father is just the replacement? The chosen one is replaced. The father has to be renewed for each generation, and that father who is balancing the daughter and the son, the light and the dark, that is it's not a person, but it's a position.
Yeah, that could be it too.
And I mean,
but it is interesting that the Mortis gods are aware of the prophecy and clearly put a lot of stock in it as well. That's the whole reason the father concedes defeat. He's like, okay, you can go. And not only you can go, you must go, and purges the memories of what Anakin saw to ensure that things will still play out the way they're supposed to, even though he himself doesn't even know how that's going to happen.
Yeah. So I don't know. There are many ways that the things could happen, and I think this is kind of my conclusion, is your chosen one, who is the chosen one? Is Anakin still the chosen one? Who is the apparent chosen one? Is going to evolve and change based on who is writing the show, who is writing the show, what their objectives are, what agenda they're trying to push forth.
And how much undue corporate influence there is.
Yes. Is who do we want to push as the chosen one because of this? And it's going to evolve based on your fandom. It's going to the individual fan is going to be who it is. Now, we've got a comment in the chat here. Is Al, I know you're gonna want to go down this road because of your love for the most recent show. So powerful from how can Anakin be the chosen one? So powerful with the Force. Obi-Wan has beaten him twice. Could Obi-Wan unknowingly be the real chosen one to bring the balance?
No, because victory in battle has nothing to do with it. Or victory in a duel has really nothing to do with it. It's what did Anakin do? He facilitated the downfall of a very broken Jedi Order, which needed to end. And so the Force seemingly chose Darth Sidious as the tool to bring about their demise. Because Jedi, like Yoda, of course, are going to foresee that things like this are happening. You needed something to stall Yoda from making any real decisions. So, here's your chosen one to keep you all distracted. He'll save you. Like, as much as they give Anakin, a hard time, you have that scene on the gunship in episode 3 when they're finally leaning on that really hard. Oh, he's the chosen one. Is he not the bring prophecy? Is he not going to bring balance to the Force? And Mace Windu's like, so the prophecy says, and it's like, they're leaning on that hard, and that was necessary because you have to bring about something better in the galaxy. The Jedi had become too dogmatic, too lazy, too political. You got to get rid of it. Palpatine's the best agent for doing it, but then you need to get rid of Palpatine and his mania, which is achieved through Vader's own ambitions, which is what prompts him to start a relationship with his son, which brings about his ultimate demise. And this is Sans sequel trilogy.
Now, let me be devil's advocate for a moment. Does Obi-Wan not facilitate many of these things that Anakin has done? He is, in fact, his master. He has trained him. Did he create that?
He has a lot to do with it because, the Duel of the Fates is aptly named because Qui-Gon was not even fazed by the fact that Anakin clearly had a lot of emotional attachment left, whereas Obi-Wan is very much a company man in that film and refers to Anakin as another pathetic life form. So, hence why it's the Duel of the Fates. This is what's the fate of the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker, solidified by Darth Maul killing Qui-Gon, but not killing him hard enough to make sure he was dead before he could tell Obi-Wan his dying wish. He facilitates it, but so does Yoda, so does Mace Windu. In the Clone Wars, we see that where they're constantly giving him a hard time. So does Ahsoka in a way, kind of encouraging Anakin to, in a sense, keep trusting his instincts as opposed to listening to Jedi all the time. And Palpatine pushes that. So there's several different agents responsible for doing that. But again, it's more Anakin's role in the prequels is to be a non-actor, is to represent something, and as the representation of something causes the Jedi to do nothing. Whereas in the original trilogy is where he finally is able to do something proactive by being ambitious and seeking to overthrow the Emperor. And because Luke has no personal animosity, Luke and Vader have no personal animosity towards each other, which is why they're able to have a civil conversation, unlike Kylo and Luke in the sequel trilogy, because there's a ton of personal animosity there. Oh, yeah. Case in point, why Luke couldn't go face Kylo, because he would just, become a complete maniac, as we saw in the Battle of Crate. So so there are plenty other agents who, and same thing in the sequel trilogy. It's like one could argue that, well, if Han and Leia had been better parents and more attentive, Kylo wouldn't have gone down that path. And if Luke had not been caving into his fears, maybe that Ben wouldn't have gone down that path either. Snoke hadn't been pushing and manipulating Kylo. So there's all these different bad faith actors all over the place. But it still sticks with, if I may, maybe not an individual person, but this point in the Skywalker bloodline. Like it's Anakin, it's Luke, it's Ben Solo.
It's Rey as an extension of that.
Yeah,
Because
it's because
Ray,
people
Ray
have
is
posited the idea that the surname Skywalker would actually mean something, like the Skywalker. Like eventually there will be some type of ancient text or something prophesizing what the Skywalker is and what it means. Potentially. So that's my position on that.
I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense too, and I'll agree with you in that Obi-Wan does not have enough of an internal excuse me, like his internal balance is not really balanced. It's far too strongly light side. He doesn't have these hints of dark side in him that Anakin does. His balance would be far more positive. He would have destroyed the Sith completely, not join them as Anakin did, which is that real kind of balance back and forth. Is Obi-Wan the chosen one in the writing and who's coolest and selling the merch and getting the ratings currently? Oh yes, very much so. But does that make him the chosen one in the saga? No. I like your point in maybe it is this outside entity, this replaced from generation to generation. Is it the Skywalker? Or
another point, if we were to assume that interpreting the chosen one prophecy as being an agent of good, then Anakin clearly being good, because he wanted to be a hero and free the slaves. That was his Jedi fantasy. Mm-hmm. That's why he's so devastated when his mother dies, because that was his mission statement when he left his mother. I will come back and free you, I promise. And his failure, that is what spearheads the rest of his decisions for the rest of the saga. And so hence why I mentioned that the Jedi had become broken, because they weren't doing what they were really supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be heroes. Like they had that great Slaves of Zygerra arc in Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan finally learns to have a bit of empathy for why Anakin is so touchy on this slave subject. And it's like, had you let Anakin be a hero, like if Qui-Gon had raised him, let's say, even if that would have meant they'd both been expelled from the Jedi Order, Anakin would have saved his mother. He would have gone on to start being a hero. He would have caught Palpatine's attention, probably would have dealt with it a lot sooner, wouldn't have fallen prey to his machinations, and things would have been gone a lot differently. But in that instance, would he have been able to change the Jedi, maybe show them the light, so to speak, and maybe they would come out of their dogma that way as opposed through wholesale slaughter by Palpatine? Maybe. Hence Duel of the Fates and its name.
So Brian, your belief, if there is in fact a chosen one, that it may be Rey, is I think by the writers and the producers, those who are in charge of episode 9. Yes, you are probably correct. I think the chosen one has been evidenced to be whoever is being written to be that at the moment, as we have gone through the saga. Is the prophecy itself was invented, created by the writers and producers, George at that point, to label Anakin as that. Whether he stayed that and became that, who knows? He is probably the best argument for that, because he displays as many of the characteristics and the bringing balance, and arguably does that in a retcon like twice. He's done it in Sith, he's done it in Jedi. He fulfills the Jedi prophecy of the chosen one. He fulfills the Sith prophecy of the powerful, the one who becomes the Sith and brings the Sith to power. He's probably the best argument, but I think my conclusion is that it's going to change. It's going to change depending on who's writing, who's involved, and it's going to depend on who you are as a fan and what you want, how you want to see your Star Wars, how you want your Star Wars to be And that, I think, is, I'm going to end with that. That's why I like the ambiguity of it. I think I do like the ambiguity because it leaves it to me as a fan to interpret this and make it my own.
Yeah. Is that the point you were going to make earlier?
I think so. Yes.
You think so? But you forgot?
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to earlier. Is
right,
that's why, like I said, is I have a hard time deciding between, do I want them to spell it out for me sometime and say Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one or not. Now, the last thing that part of what I was going to say earlier that didn't is, in my research, if you want it to be cut and dried for you, I found a clip that I'll put a link to in the chats of George saying Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one. Period.
Yeah, that's from the Chosen One featurette from the Revenge of the Sith DVD.
Yeah.
And that's very much true when you look at the first 6 films. And I would posit even with 7 and 8 tying that thing off closer. It's just when 9 comes along and throws in Palpatine, that as we mentioned was the cataclysmic event which shatters a lot of the canon and forces you to re-examine everything. Like, I remember being there on the celebration floor in Chicago watching that trailer, and my heart sank when I heard that laugh at the end of it, because I'm like, oh no, they're abandoning the story. They've given up. And yes, when Ian walked out on the stage and said roll it again, that was a magical moment for sure. But I did congratulate him when I got his autograph for, congratulations on your return to the saga, to which he's like, but because everybody loves more Ian for sure. We even got a teeny bit of him in Obi-Wan series, but
yeah,
it's like there are other ways you could do that. It's like, no, it's
yeah. Well, like I said, is I think it's going to be open, and it's a discussion that can be had over and over and over again, depending on the company you're in. So that is our discussion for today, because that is right there at our time.
So I'm going to end it also that, taking all 9 movies into account, I subscribe to the theory that the Skywalker and that bloodline is the chosen one. That's the thing in the new, when you take into account all the new canon. So that's what I'm sticking with for now.
Yes, and that is his name, Grogu Skywalker.
No.
No, just teasing. But I like that. I've got to think on that. That's a new interpretation for me, and that's something I think I will think on in the future. And I hope you guys will as well. As if you have further questions as you're watching this, go ahead and put them in the chat. We do respond to those, and we can address them in future episodes. And if you want to know a little bit more about what goes on in Rebels and some of these pieces and parts, Monday night we will have Rebels Revisited will be on the channel, and keep watching along as we talk about different parts of the Star Wars saga. I think we're going to be discussing the High Republic in our Thursday watch along this time, and watching along with the High Republic panel from Star Wars Celebration. And that's a whole other kettle of fish when you start going back that far, and we'll have to see what they do in the build up to, and if they do mention the prophecy and the chosen one, and who did they think it was way back before there was an Anakin. Who knows? All right, thanks all for joining us. Until next time, may the force be with you.